Welcome to Jurassic World.
Good morning, guests. Welcome to the Jurassic World Minute, where we visit Jurassic World 1 minute at a time. These animals aren't extinct anymore. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And then on this episode, we'll be discussing minute 23 of Jurassic World. Before we get to that, David, heading over to Jurassic-Pedia.com, we have a full write-up here by Claw on the Raptor Paddock itself, and going back and looking at some of the concept art and other shots from the Raptor Paddock. I have found that, yes, there is an extended area out behind the Raptor Paddock. It's only small, seemingly not as built as big in the final paddock as what concept art and that shows, but that answers our question about that missing section of the paddock. And over here on Pedia, there is a big write-up on the raptors in there, all the scenes that take place there during the film. We get a good shot there of Barry with one of the raptors. I think it's Blue in the containment equipment, putting the muzzles and the cameras on them.
Yeah. I always kind of thought this paddock setup was really interesting, just because, I mean, it's all made out of Connex boxes, kind of just bolted together with some offshoot cages in a small kind of little compound area set up against the jungle. And this area seems like really kind of small and intimate and kind of small time. And I always kind of felt that the whole aesthetic of the entire area seemed really Jurassic Park-ish, you know?
Mm.
Like I could imagine this being something they would have built for the first movie, including the sloping lines of the bolted areas, you know?
Yep. Yeah, and just all the cages. And I do love how most of the exterior shots of the cage, we do get... there's always some vehicles or something parked nearby just to give it the scale. We keep on saying about how small the space is, but it is a fairly large enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
There's one shot here of the G-Wagon parked beside it. Later on when we start getting into letting them go, we've got the Unimogs and that parked beside it as well. So yeah, for all info on the Raptor Paddock itself and its role in the film, head over to Jurassic-Pedia.com for that and more articles.
Oh, you come here and you don't learn anything about these animals except what you want to know. You made them and now you think you own them.
We do own them. Extinct animals have no rights.
They're not extinct anymore, Hoskins.
Alright, Dave, good to go on minute 23.
I am.
As we enter minute 22 of Jurassic World, Owen chewed out Hoskins for coming here and not learning anything about the animals. And just because you made them, you think you own them. As we open on minute 23, Hoskins retorts, we do own them. An extinct animal has no rights. Owen counters, they're not extinct anymore, Hoskins. Hoskins then goes on to tell Owen that we're sitting on a gold mine, but Masrani's wanting these animals to stock a petting zoo. At the 26-second mark, as they descend from the upper catwalks down to the ground level, after a lot of exposition by Hoskins, Owen laughs and says, how long has InGen been practicing this pitch? Hoskins replies, since we hired you out of the Navy. At the 34-second mark, as Hoskins is going on about saving troops and Owen knowing the endgame, Owen opens the cage door and walks inside, locking it behind him, his only way of getting away from Hoskins. As Hoskins continues to try to convince Owen, in the background we can hear a pig squealing. And as the minute ends, Hoskins continues. War brings struggle. Struggle brings greatness. As we open on minute 23, we continue the dialogue from Hoskins, the evil villain from last minute, telling Owen that we do own them. Extinct animals have no rights.
Well, it actually anymore.
No, they are not. And they haven't been for a long time. But Hoskins replies exactly, we're sitting on a gold mine here and Masrani is using it to stock a petting zoo. So again, further proof from our discussion last minute that that Hoskins is comparing what he's seeing here to what he's been seeing over at the petting zoo. and thinking Owen is having a lot of success here.
Yeah.
It'd be a long time before we start seeing raptors in the petting zoo, I'd imagine.
Oh, yeah. I don't think we'd ever see them in the petting zoo, honestly. Not unless they have them all in that with that muzzle contraption thing they've got here, you know? You can pet them, but it's going to be really, really stressful for them.
I could see them all running around the pen with corks stuck on each claw. Just so they're not sharp. But Owen tells Hoskins that he just wants to teach people some humility, and he doesn't want to make weapons. And that's where we get a laugh out of Hoskins. You think the 8th richest man in the world is only into oil, telecom and family fun parks? He's so diversified he doesn't even know what he owns, which is something we definitely come back to later.
Oh, not only that, but I mean, I was talking with a friend earlier today about how paramilitarized the entire engine security team is, and he brought it up because he mentioned that he was kind of rolling his eyes at somebody who wanted to do Biosyn Army versus Engine Army, which I mean, yeah, is kind of an eye roll thing, but yeah, it was. I would kind of mentioned how I never really considered the engine security team to be paramilitary, and that I kind of figured the animal containment unit was more that. But then he mentioned how on the Masrani site, the Masrani Global site, the site actually calls the engine security team headed by Hoskins a paramilitary force.
Mm. Well, you definitely said it later in the film where that team start arriving on the island in a lot of military vehicles. Even the guys in the chopper, they're shooting pteranodons out of the sky, one shot, one kill. They're not just glorified security guards. They're definitely ex-military.
I compared them to Pinkertons, which is a long-standing kind of paramilitary security force here in the United States. You can basically hire them for security for anything.
Yep. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of organisations like this sort of looking for those service people leaving the armed forces that have special talents that can help out. But here we're starting to see a different area, the raptor pen as well, sort of the cages where they're being housed and presumably fed behind the main enclosure here. And you can really start to see a bit of a different approach to the way the animals are being contained in these films compared to Jurassic Park. There doesn't appear to be any electric fences whatsoever. Everything's steel bars and cages, which you'd think would make it easier for the raptors to climb out if they get a purchase on the wall.
Yeah. I was thinking how in The Lost World the raptors climb up the scaffolding on the high hide to get to Eddie, and I'm just looking at that scaffolding support strut in the center of the catwalks, and I'm thinking, I'm surprised they haven't figured out how to get up that yet. You know,
Masrani tells Claire earlier that the animals always try and escape, and he has to be smarter. But we don't. Yeah, it's something else again. Jumping raptors, climbing raptors. Missed opportunity. We need to see that in Dominion, please. Even though we've presumably only got one raptor left. But,
well, the other thing is the it might be a thing where they never try the same plan twice. Where if they try a plan and it doesn't work, they just don't try it again. Because remember, that's something Muldoon mentioned in the first movie, is they never attack the same place twice. So it's possible they could have tried that like the first time, and and Owen, or not Owen's guys, but somebody came up to him and it was shock prods and started shocking him back down, and they didn't like that, so they didn't try it again.
Yeah, well, one thing we haven't mentioned, but we see here, and as they're coming off the top of the cage, and next minute when they're sort of talking beside the cage, there are armed guards sort of patrolling those top catwalks, presumably keeping an eye on the Raptors at all times, so not giving them the chance to, like as we mentioned before, go off in the corner and start discussing how they're going to escape or get up to hijinks.
I was going to say, but we will be seeing another escape attempt here coming up, starting, I think, next minute and next couple minutes after that.
Yep. As they walk down the set of stairs to the ground level, Owen asks Hoskins how long has InGen been practicing this pitch, and he replies, since the day you were hired out of the Navy. You knew the end game. These animals will replace thousands of troops on the ground. How many lives would that save? Which, here, a little bit more backstory about Owen. He's we knew Masrani said there's a Navy man here. We know InGen hired him straight out of the Navy. And confirmation that he's actually employed by InGen. He's not just a civilian contractor or something like that. And also confirmation that he knew what the end game was. We've been discussing these last previous minutes if he knows what the final plan for the Raptors was going to be, and here it seems he does.
I think Owen knew what Hoskins wanted the end game to be, but he didn't want it to come to that, I mean, I think he was hoping that at some point Masrani would kind of interject and say, okay, this has gone far enough. We're shutting the program down,
Yeah.
Let's go open up a snack bar with these guys.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and that's where Owen's he's not really talking much. He's sort of just trying to get away from Hoskins because he sort of knows that Hoskins is right. And funnily enough, the only way he can get a bit of space between him and Hoskins is to go into the cage and close the door behind him, so he can't follow him anymore. He looks at him the final time, sort of walks over to where that containment equipment is, with the Raptors' heads go in. But Hoskins keeps on going. War is part of nature. Look around, Owen. Everything in this jungle is trying to murder the other. Mother Nature's way of testing her creations, refining the pecking order. War is a struggle. Struggle breeds greatness.
Which, that line actually kind of reminds me of a concept that was heavily discussed in the second novel, about how most people, like Hoskins, imagine nature as red in tooth and claw, as the phrase goes. And then it was Richard Levine brings up that nature is actually more green in leaf and stem. And it's kind of interesting how, because conflict doesn't drive evolution. It's adaptation to the environment that does. And the environment changes constantly in this kind of war between the things that do want to eat it, but at the same time, the other thing is, it's not always just because they want to eat it. It's sex, it's what attracts a mate, it's anything to propagate the next generation,
Yeah.
It's like, for example, Triceratops frills they were first assumed to be protection against T-Rex. But we know that what it was actually more likely for was ornamentation to display in mating rituals, just because the bigger, flashier male got the girl,
Yep. Yep, that's something we see all through the animal kingdom.
Exactly. Deer, for example, the bigger the buck, the bigger the harem.
It also does bring up a interesting thing here too, with everything out in the jungle is trying to murder the other. Yes, it's the tropics, offshore island. It does bring up having dinosaurs on the island probably isn't the only dangerous thing living on the islands. We notice snakes. Burke finds that out, and other sort of things that can kill you, eat your insides for juju beads. But
it's thinking the same. Right?
Again, it's something we don't Well, I suppose the Lost World does, even though it's not the snake that does finally kill.
Yeah. He just gets freaked out about it.
Yeah.
But there are boa constrictors that we see in the first movie. There's that boa constrictor that passes the raptor's eye, and that I'm sure eats small animals on the island, like rat, or I think there was a possum that is mentioned in the novel.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sort of thinking to King Kong and Skull Island sort of thing too, but that's more so literal Lost World where things are bigger and that sort of stuff. There's been no... Oh, well, then we get that damn dragonfly in the first novel as well. Well,
also in the novel, I mean, we know that there's howler monkeys on the mainland, and presumably apes do know how to swim, and if they could, I'm sure they would figure out a way to get to the offshore islands. There's basilisk lizards that probably do the same thing. They stow away on a human boat, get to the islands, and they form a breeding population. I mean, I'm sure that almost anything that is on the mainland, short of large apex predators like a jaguar or something like that, would probably be on Isla Nublar if the dinosaurs haven't eaten them all already.
Well, that was a big thing with the original novel, the fact the raptors were eating rats, and that's how they weren't noticing, they weren't starving. But yeah, it's safe to assume that any life that was on that island, naturally that island become an island because of the rising seawaters cancelling off or cutting off any land bridges, and then evolving in their own little way. It's how a lot of islands and that sort of stuff around the world have their own ecosystems.
Well, also, I believe Isla Nublar is, and same with the Los Cinco Mortes archipelago, are both Isla Nublar itself is a volcanic seamount, but Los Cinco Mortes is an extinct volcanic archipelago like Hawaii. It's just the plate tectonics moved the island away from the islands away from the vent, and so the volcano, basically the big island is the newest island. So in this case, Isla Sorna would be the youngest island of that extinct archipelago, and the plate tectonics are slow. The Pacific plate is slowly shifting it away from the ocean, from the source of the volcanic activity, and eventually those islands in a couple million years will disappear.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you'd have to set a prequel 10 million years ago to see what happened, what come first. Yeah. Did the islands come up out of the ocean, or did the ocean rise to cut off the land bridge?
Well, I think it's presumed, because the islands are volcanic in nature, that these were volcanic seamounts like the Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah. Which then makes you wonder if it's the only reason non-flying animals are there is because the humans transport them there. I've got no idea. the whole Hawaiian, I know there's a vast wildlife on Hawaii. I'd imagine most of that's because of human interaction and not nature.
Well, there's that, and even birds. They capture a snake on the mainland and they see the island to land, and they live on the island. They're bringing it back to the chick, but the snake wriggles free.
Yep.
And it gets dropped on the island and it survives. And then the bird goes back for another one and drops the second one, and that one just so happens to be a female. There you go, snake population.
Yep. No, long tangent short. Back when the film came out in theatres, I was wondering if this was a hint at maybe there was some wild stuff still on the island that we hadn't seen yet, and unfortunately that's never addressed again. But
I definitely know that there was expectations of wild raptors in the movie before the movie came out, and they just never delivered. Yeah. Especially with the whole restricted section and people assuming, there's got to be wild dinosaurs